An article published today in Torah Musings by a prominent posek argued the following regarding the reversal of Roe v. Wade. He said that reversing Roe v. Wade is a good thing, and the proper halachic response of the Jewish community, which has Jewish law, and Jewish law does permit abortion under certain circumstances, would be to establish a fund that would help women in states that are forbidding all kinds of abortion, and also some are forbidding contraception. But the idea would be to provide a fund for Jewish women from those states to travel to states in which it's permitted, and where they can get their care. So I just wanted to walk through what that would look like. Well, first of all, there's something to be said about the moral choice of promoting a law that would affect people adversely, while maintaining that for your own community, you'll have a way to get out of it. So you're advancing a law that would make life unlivable even for members of your own community, but for them, you'll have a way of getting them out of it to states where you disagree with the law, but that actually serves your community well. There's something to be said for that. But going with the establishment of this fund, so I'm just thinking aloud here. So you would have someone who's having a child who has a severe condition that makes the child not viable, and so there's really no way to carry that child to term. Those decisions are sometimes found in the 8th month, even in the 9th month. So how would that look? So you have a woman, she's in the 9th or 8th month, and goes to ultrasound, discovers the devastating news that once the child is born, it won't stand really a chance of survival, and in some cases her rabbi may say it's okay. So fine. So the fund is not providing just a ticket to Spirit Airlines. Let's say she's in Louisiana. So she needs to fly to New York, and once she's in New York, right, there's no universal healthcare or anything, so she's from Louisiana. She would have to have what, $50,000 procedure for that. She would probably not be able to stay with her sister or something. It could be something personal. It could be something she doesn't want to share with the world. So she'd have to come to New York, stay in a hotel, have a procedure that could be $50,000, could be more, and then come back. And that's one case. So that is how this fund would work, I guess, where you have every case would need to be flown into New York, put up, and then all medical costs being paid. That's one case, for example. Then you have an Orthodox woman who's living, say, in Kentucky, and she has an ectopic pregnancy, and she's in the operating room. She doesn't realize, but she starts bleeding, and so at that point, it's either her life or the child's life. Clearly, Jewish law states that the child's life doesn't take precedence over hers since the child is not born, and so she's bleeding to death, and the fetus doesn't stand a chance of surviving either. But in these states, what they're saying is that they would forbid abortion in that case. So in the case where the child will not live and the mother's bleeding to death, they won't save the mother's life, which is likely to lead to the death of both of them, so that they don't do an abortion. So I guess in the mind of this article, the idea would be what? I mean, she starts bleeding there. When she's delivering the baby, she starts bleeding. Whatever situations that are already mentioned in the Gemara, where you discover at the time of birth that her life is at risk. How would you do that? You would get a helicopter with all the medical equipment, and for $2-3 million, have some OR going on in the air, and it wouldn't work, right? It wouldn't work even if you put in $10 million for each case like that. So that's just another example of how unfeasible this idea is. Another example, you have a situation in which, unfortunately, it's something that happens. It happens, I believe, at least 1 in 10 pregnancies. It's tragic. It's heartbreaking. You have a woman who has a miscarriage, and so they're saying now already in Texas, even before the actual reversal went into place, that the pill that they would usually give under such a situation, which is, by the way, not given freely even in the more liberal states, so that wouldn't be available for a woman in Texas. So if she has a miscarriage, I'm not sure what she would do. She would travel to New York and once again have all the travel expenses and her health care paid in New York? Would that even work? And then the other suggestion the article made for Rachmanim B'nei Rachmanim to do was to establish a fund that would help women who got pregnant and want to have an abortion carry the baby to term, and then so they can give it up for adoption. So let's think how that would work. So you have a girl who's 15 years old and raped by her father, uncle, whoever it may be. There was a story in Brooklyn, a frum principal in Brooklyn a few years ago. There was a story like that made it to the news. So you have someone like that. He rapes his daughter, and she's pregnant. She doesn't really know what this means, but 2-3 weeks in, she discovers that she's pregnant. And so the idea would be what? To provide funding for her prenatal care until the child is born. Then to make sure you cover the expenses of birth, which, by the way, depending on where you are, can be $20,000, can be $50,000. People get all kinds of different bills. And so the idea would be what? To make her carry the baby to term, fund the care, and then once the child is born, how would that adoption work? There are 400,000 kids in America waiting for foster care. Maybe they would find someone, maybe they wouldn't. So how would that work? The bottom line is, hypothetically, to say, well, we should have one standard for these states, one standard for the other states, as long as we can fly, whoever's close to us and has a rabbi sign off on their permission to a blue state is not an idea that I think is acceptable to many. The idea that we should make a standard that we would never live under. And so then you have the idea also of saying that there's a fund. This is not a fund to pay for a Spirit Airlines ticket. This is a fund that you would have to provide the entire medical care, prenatal, postnatal, surgical care of every woman that went through that. And we're talking, this is not something that happens once in 10 years. These are things that unfortunately can happen quite often to several people. So it's unrealistic, and it would not be able to carry through. And who would be exactly fundraising for this fund? I don't know that such a successful attempt has been made elsewhere. In Israel, you have an organization, which in my mind is a wonderful organization called Efrat, where they give financial aid to women through pregnancy, through birth. But in Israel, there's nationalized healthcare, and so you don't have to worry about that. And obviously, even in Israel, there's abortion provided, and some of the greatest rabbis there do permit it under certain circumstances. And so the idea that we should accept some kind of extremist evangelical standard for abortion, the kind of which you're seeing in Texas, Louisiana, the kind of which raises child mortality rate and really kills women, is not, it does not seem like a good or moral idea to me.